West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel and Santokie Hewitt, and with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santokie Nagilendran. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, Mash, and we're here to review, the second test and the series as a whole of West Indies versus India. West Indies piling on nearly 400 in their final innings. Shell-shocked us so much we didn't even get to record yesterday to do our normal post day. We needed 24 hours to process what we had just seen. But it's an interesting one because what had seen Mash as a series where we were resigned to being depressed and saying we've been rolled over. Somehow we've managed to have a glimmer of light towards that end with that performance, and it's kind of slightly changed the narrative around West Indies. I don't think it should because of it was one innings, but you know how hot takes work. Everyone's come up with their hot take about West Indies and their abilities now. But overall, what sort of your overall take or thoughts about the series as a whole?
Yeah, I think there's so many different angles you can run with. And I think fundamentally, all of these different takes I'm about to say are all correct in some shape or form. But there is no one overarching take, I don't think. The first take I've got is that when you're a smaller tier, it's not a smaller tier, everyone's going to get vexed, I said tier. When you're a weaker side in Test cricket and you only get a 2-match Test series against a team that is significantly better than you, you will inevitably always play better in the second test than in the first test, particularly in this scenario like the India series where we didn't even play a warm-up game. So, and you did a video about, 4 days, maybe a week before the start of the test series saying, have we prepared to fail? Because we just flew in there, did 7 or 8 days in camp. And some will say, yeah, but Mash Santokie warm-up games are glorified like games against like 19-year-olds and stuff like that. But the point is we didn't play any kind of game to acclimatize to what we might face, right? And predictably, we got absolutely destroyed in the first test. It's not as simplistic as that, though. And this is my point. No one take is the only take, right? But that's certainly one of my takes from it, that weaker teams play better the more time they spend in a country, right? Obviously, in the old times, a test match series used to be 5 matches and more blah, 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 blah. Cool, that's one take. The second take is we came into this series wanting someone to score some 50s. We weren't even thinking about centuries. So in that regard, having 2 players leave with a century, which matches the amount of centuries we got in the whole of the last cycle, and 150, can only be seen as a positive. The fact that those 2 players were 2 players that Darren Sammy has brought in himself under his new, and the 50 was from Justin Graves, who many people would have said, hold on, Jason Holder should be in this team, not Justin Graves. Sammy can look at that and say to people, and this isn't a defense of Sammy, this is just another take. He can look at that and say, trust my process. Particularly with Shai Hope, trust my process. I brought Shai Hope back. Lots of people said he should play more red ball cricket. He's leaving this series as the top average scorer in the West Indies team and with a century. So he can say, trust the process. That's another take. There's more takes, but because of time, I'll give you one more take. My final take is that, great, second test, far more competitive, only lost by 7 wickets. But let's not get this twisted. It was still a huge defeat and we were never going to win the game. So as much as we can leave with a moral victory and a sense of pride that we actually fought in the second test, the gaps between the haves and the have-nots on the pitch is still huge. And we can't really assess how far we've come in this test series or have gone in this test series without seeing if they can even build on it come New Zealand.
Yeah, I think if this was like a football match, it would be the equivalent of being 4-0 down at half-time and then us rallying to get 2 goals in the second half, building some confidence back. But fundamentally, we still lost the game by a big margin. And the game was pretty much done and dusted. I mean, realistically, once India declared on 518, they batted us out the match. There was no way West Indies could win the match. There was so much time we couldn't bat for a draw. So it was essentially batting for pride. And they did, as you said, they did manage to salvage some pride. I think just to counter, like you said, I think there were a lot of positives to take from this. Individual batting performances. Batting's been an area of weakness for the past few years or decades, some might say. In terms of our bowling, we took how many Indian wickets? 13 Indian wickets, and we generally struggled. I think that's partly down to one, like you said, the lack of preparation. It's hard for us to go to the subcontinent and be able to get that turn. And also it just points to the fact that, Mash, when it comes to spin bowling, there's a general lack of quality in the region, right? People might say you could have added Gudakesh Moti. Jamel Warrican's our number one spinner, right? So Gudakesh Moti, I don't think it would have helped to have had Gudakesh Moti alongside Warrican, but I don't think he would have changed much going on there. Chase and Warrican ended up the leading wicket takers, 5 wickets each, but we just generally struggled. Seals had a tough time. I think it wasn't a pitch that was necessarily suited to pace, and he kind of struggled out there. But again, what pace is going to be able to go? Like obviously, Bumrah and Siraj are gonna do stuff on this pitch because they play in India on a regular basis, right? Seals flying in Seals without any preparation, expect him to do much. He bowled admirably well, but I just think he just struggled overall. And when Shamar Joseph and Alzari Joseph are also ruled out, leads to a massive sort of deficit in our bowling attack. So, I mean, for me, it's the opposite to what we usually say about tests, right? The batting kind of held up towards the end, but the bowling was essentially what let us down. But we'll focus on the positives, Mash. I guess the first thing is Roston Chase and Darren Sammy have both come out post-test and said this is a stepping stone. Leading, I don't know what they didn't say onto what, because we go to New Zealand next, which is completely different conditions to India. But they've kind of spun it into, okay, cool, we've learned a lot from this series. The performances of Campbell and Hope mean, we're building towards something. First question, I guess, to you, Mash, is do you see this as a stepping stone, or for you, is this just another event in isolation that happens once every so often in West Indies cricket? Or the fact, like you said, it is players who have come into the fold under Sammy means it could point to some sort of long-term improvement in the side?
Let me give a nuanced take on it. At the end of the day, the results from Australia News and India read 5-0, right? However, you and I said it was going to be 5-0 before those series started. So neither one of us is surprised it's 5-0. If there was somebody else as head coach, we would have predicted 5-0 regardless. Even if it was Buddha and Shiva as head coach, we would have predicted 5-0, right? So in that context, I'm not here to have an argument about, but they should have done better because X, Y, Z. 5-0 was the expectation. What I will say in defense of Roston Chase's comments and Darren Sammy's comments, what I will say is this. Until the 27 not out versus Australia, I think everybody's take coming out of most people's take, or the rational take coming out of the Australia series would have been like, oh, we lost 3-0, but actually we were relatively competitive. Yeah, we couldn't really bat because it was pitches that favoured the bowling, but we bowled them down. They've just got 4 goats of the game, so they bowled us down because we can't bat. If it had been like 150 all out instead of 27, I genuinely think that would have been the take on the series. Obviously, there's a natural gap between us and Australia, but it was relatively competitive.
Yeah.
India, so few teams go to India, and obviously New Zealand just did, but so few teams go to India and win. The funny thing is, particularly in the second test, in fact, the first test, the gap of the defeat in the first test was smaller than the gap of defeat in 2018. So even if we tried to paint the first test as completely disastrous, we see more disastrous defeats in India, right? And then the defeat in the second test by 7 wickets was our best performance in India since 2011. So to me, this isn't me defending Sammy and Chase. This is me saying there is a context. I do think there's a context to what they're saying, and I'm going to equate it to this. I nearly called you Sammy. I'm gonna equate it to this, Santokie. I see this as I've said it before on the previous episode. You pick your poison as to which one it more applies to. I see this as no different to the growing pains that Mikel Arteta faced with Arsenal when he took the job and Arsenal finished 8th and Bearman were jumping online saying Arteta out. Or, if you don't think it applies to him, to the growing pains that Ruben Amorim is facing with Manchester United, where he's saying, listen, this is my process. This is what I'm trying to do. I've got to get rid of a couple players because they're dead out here. And this is what I'm working towards. You're either with me or you're not. Now, obviously, some Man United fans may listen to that, Santokie, and go, yeah, but Amorim shit and Sammy shit and da-da-da-da-da-da. But I see it quite similar to those two football managers where they're at the beginning of a process in their head, and it's whether the fan base is willing to give in this case, Sammy and Chase, the time to prove that their process is the right process.
Yeah, I guess you could say, yeah, Sammy has a system in place. Obviously, the counter argument could be he could be the new Ange Postecoglou and just be going on vibes and hoping that a cup somehow winning a miracle cup like a World Cup saves his skin. Because it's hard to tell, Mash, because I guess we need to take, as you said, looking at these 5 tests, we were always going to lose 5-0, right? It was expected. So as we said on previous shows, really and Chase actually said this as well, next year when they play Sri Lanka and Pakistan at home in the Caribbean, that will be more of a reflection of sort of where we are, where our game is at, and whether, Sammy would have had a lot of time by then. So he would have had over a year in the role as test head coach. So whether to see if those plans have been put in place and have been implemented, because realistically,
can I just say, if Sri Lanka, I'm saying this now on record on the 15th of October 2025, if Sri Lanka beat us 2-0 at home and Pakistan beat us 2-0 at home, I'm the first to say Sammy out.
Oh, yeah.
No, but it's true though. It's true because that would be a legitimate metric by which to say, wait, we'll allow it for Australia. We'll allow it for Australia and India. But if them two men come and sweep us in the Caribbean, then I'm getting behind people saying, no, F the process, it's not working.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're not going to beat Sri Lanka and Pakistan at home in this World Test Championship, because we didn't beat Bangladesh, right? We drew 1-1 at home. So that means who can we beat? Because in theory, those are the weakest teams, right? And they'll be playing at home. So, yeah, I agree with that. I think Sammy will go if we lose those 4 tests. And I agree with what you said, Mash. The Australia series, the narrative is forever been stained by the 27 all out. But in that 4th innings, we were chasing 204, which on the pitch was always going to be impossible, basically. But 204 runs, it wasn't a mammoth target. So even if we'd got all out for 100, we would have only lost by 100 runs. It wouldn't have been that comprehensive a defeat, and we bowled Australia out. I think
Australia only made like 115 or something.
Yeah, Australia they only reached 300 once out of the 6 innings they played. So it was generally, in terms of West Indies Australia, it was a competitive series, but the 27 is what all people that's the headline. So let's focus on the positives, Mash. I guess if we're talking about the Delhi premium, Shea Hope and John Campbell have secured their place in the Test 11 for the next 2 years at least with those centuries. But credit to both of them, because I think John Campbell came at a time, where Tage was obviously struggling, Afanase was struggling, and he really went on the attack, used the sweep very well, came on the front foot a lot to the bowlers, didn't really show any fear. Obviously there was a few LBW shouts which he got overturned on review and stuff like that. But overall, it was a really, really good innings, and like I said on previous lives, definitely vindication for him after, he was banned. He could have easily fallen out of the game. So for him to come back, score his first ever Test century in India, of all places, was a great moment. And then backed up by Hope. Hope, we know what he can do. Obviously, you've done videos in the past saying, Hope needs to get back in the Test side. We've always been hoping that he can replicate his magnificent ODI form into Test cricket. And whilst this is just one innings, you can't really take much from it. It is a good sign because he did play very confidently. And so if we can get those two, if those two are going to be consistent, that's the big thing, right? If those two can be consistent, solves a massive problem, because then we've got 2 in our top 6 now who can actually bat, right? Rather than us worrying about who's going to be able to fall. But with Campbell, we've seen it before. He offer you a glimmer of hope, and then it will just be taken away. So I just want to see some consistency. And bearing in mind, both of these players are 32, 33 years old. This is essentially, they're going past their prime now, in theory. Yeah. So essentially, they've got these 2 years to basically prove themselves as Test cricketers, right? So we're hoping that they make the most of it. But first, your thoughts on your Jamaican compatriot John Campbell in his innings, the 115.
If I'm John Campbell, if this innings doesn't tell him that he belongs at this level of cricket, whether he does or whether he doesn't, if he can't use this innings as a launch pad over the next 2 years of the World Test Championship cycle to say, let me prove to people that all of that pretty 20s, 30s that I've played, there's always been a brilliant cricketer on the brilliant. There's always been a good batter in there. He's now got to. I now want to see some, like, every test series from now on. Campbell's got to go into it thinking, I'm supposed to make at least one score over 50, if not two. Some people like Mash, that's such a low standard, but this is where we're at, right? Hope, I mean, what a weird career for Hope. 3 test centuries now, all of them away from the Caribbean, 2 in England, 1 in India. Do you know how many men would love to end their career saying they've got 2 test centuries in England and 1 in India, but he still averages 25? Do you know what I mean? So this is, again, Hope. He's about to turn 32 in the next month or so. I think your point is valid, Santokie. A lot of these guys, Chase is about to turn 34, Campbell 33, 32. A lot of these guys, this is almost like the last dance to end their test career with an average. If I'm Campbell, Hope, Chase, all that lot, I'm thinking over the next 2 years, this World Test Championship cycle, let me make sure I can get my average up to 30. If they can get their average
Man said the previous generation got lower 400, yeah. Us, man, praying that someone can finish their career on 30, you know.
I'm not even saying 30. I'm not even saying 31. You know, I'm actually just saying 30.
So what you say? if Hope or Chase finish with an average of 30, what happens? Does Viv come down? Clive Lloyd come down? Give them the handshake?
Listen, for this generation, if any of these guys, because the thing is, all of them are averaging 25. So if they can end their career averaging 30, they would have gone on a generational run to go from 25.
Free Bonner, you know, man, still got an average of 38. You know, Bonner's like sobers out here, bro.
Jermaine Blackwood, the Nkrumah Bonner must be sitting there wherever he is in the world going, they dropped me for averaging 38. Blackwood is sitting somewhere going, I got dropped for averaging 31. Like, do you know what I mean? And now we're just begging someone to try touch 30 before their career is done, you know? But it's the reality of where we're at. A bigger question, Santokie, that I'll put to you is, to all intents and purposes, when you end a tour with 390 all out and you make India bat again and you only lose by 7 wickets, you kind of have to stick with the players, right? You can't really make any major changes. Obviously, Shamar Joseph comes back in, Alzari Joseph comes back in because they were injured and they would have been in otherwise. And obviously, New Zealand will see more than spin. So Carrie Pierre will step out, for example. But I'm more looking at the batting. Is that batting lineup now locked in, Santokie? Because I can't see much justification for changing it. Campbell's now got a century, he's in. Tage only just came back, so he gets another goal, right? Alec Athanaze scored a couple, I think 140 and 130 or something like that. 38 and a 40 something. So he gets to stay because that's like at the high end of a West Indian, right? Who's for? Chase is captain, he stays. Hope has got 100, he stays. Graves got a 50, he stays. And then Imlak's just coming as, I think that's basically the team is already set for the next test series, unless there's injuries.
Yes, it's an interesting one because I still think Sammy would like to fit King into his plans, right?
Oh, I forgot about King. I forgot King played in the first test, yeah.
So what's gonna we can't ditch King after this. So how's King gonna fit into that? Because I think Hope's not gonna wicket keep. I just think Hope, I thought that at the time, Hope being captain of the white ball sides, you can't have him wicket keeping in tests and batting as well, especially after this century. So I think Hope as a wicket keeper's done. So you got to fit a wicket keeper into the side, right? Imlak, they seem to like him in the subcontinent more than anything because he's good at predicting spin. Do they persevere with Imlak? Probably. Or were you going with a Josh De Silva? But how do you fit King in? Because there's no one else in that batting lineup who can take the gloves and slot a King in for Imlak.
So then it means it's horses for courses, right? So do they look at King? So for example, when it's in New Zealand conditions, which favour pace more than spin, do they look at the fact that King scored 75 against Australia in a series where everybody got bowled down? Do they look at that and go, King plays pace better than Alec Athanaze, so King comes back in? Or is Athanaze given the 41-38 run premium from India? And because Athanaze came back in because he plays spin well. Do you see what I mean? So is it horses for courses, or is it you retain your spot because you got a 41 and a 38?
Yeah, see, this is what I was thinking. I was thinking because I think Sammy does want King in the side, right, test side going forwards, especially in somewhere like New Zealand. So I was thinking Afanase is technically the most vulnerable. But then, do you really want to go from dropping Kevlon Anderson, then dropping Afanase, then putting King in at 3? It's a lot of changes, but Sammy hasn't been afraid to make those changes. So we'll see how it goes. And also, how does King? Is Sammy gonna base? Let's say King goes to Bangladesh and hits a century in the ODIs, for instance, one of the ODIs. Does Sammy see that as okay, cool? He's in form. I'm gonna use because there's no red ball cricket for King to get back into the side, right?
Exactly.
So what are you basing it on? It's gonna be really interesting. But I just can't see King going all the way because King will be in New Zealand for the white balls, but I just can't see him riding drinks for the free tests against New Zealand. Like,
Do you
surely you've got
see?
to play.
This is often sent to me as a message, and I've never asked you before, and I've never really contemplated it because I've always said it don't make sense because he doesn't play that position in domestics. Do you see a situation where King opens? Obviously, he does it in white ball cricket, but can you see a situation where I don't know? Let's say Tage don't make runs. Let's say Tage opens in New Zealand, right, and doesn't get past 20 in the first and second test. Could you see a situation where they say, you know what, Brandon, just go and open in Test cricket as well?
I could see it because it's West Indies. I don't think that will suit him because, like you said, he hasn't opened in any red ball cricket before, right? But if you want to fit him in, and the thing is, I'm not confident about Tage at all. Like nothing I've seen suggests that he's gonna produce in New Zealand either. So I think at some point you're gonna, whether it be mid-series in New Zealand or even before the series against New Zealand, they're gonna have to make a call on Tage, right? But there's no other openers that you can kind of slot in unless you go back to a McCall Louis, which I don't think they're gonna do, right? So then you could solve all your problems by saying, all right, King, what do you think about opening? The thing is, if you ask King, I'm sure he'll take it because you want to get back into play Test cricket, right? So that could also be a scenario that they go with. But it'd be very interesting because, like I said, I just think King. If you made such a big deal for King to come back to Test cricket, you can't just drop him after 4 tests, right? So he's gonna have to slot back in. And the other interesting one is obviously Justin Graves has done reasonably well in India. They said actually, Sammy said he was going to bat him at 6, but because India batted first and Graves had to bowl, he ended up batting lower down the order. Which
Shit, I didn't even hear that.
Yeah, so that kind of shows you how confident Sammy is. But
it also shows you that they're done with Holder. It shows you the level of not done with Holder, but it shows they're not dropping Graves for Holder. So if Holder now gets in the West Indies team, it's only in the place of a bowler.
Yeah.
So I mean, and obviously they asked Holder to come to India when one of the Josephs got injured, right? And Holder said, "No, I've got surgery." So he's obviously in there thinking, but he's not in there thinking in an all-rounder position.
Yeah, this is what I mean, right? So that's going to, but I don't think Holder, as an out-and-out bowler, if you got Shamar Joseph, Azari Joseph, Jaden Seals, I don't think Holder makes your 11, right? He might make the squad, but I don't think as an out-and-out bowler.
I would have rather have had him than Johan Lane and Anderson Phillip, though.
Yeah, of course. That's what I mean. So if it's a case of one of the Josephs is injured, I think Holder gets in the 11 as an out-and-out bowler. But if all our first choice bowlers are fit, Holder's not making that 11, right? So that's going to be another interesting call. But I do think New Zealand is going to play more to our strengths with the pace bowling. So hopefully, we can put up some sort of performance and with this new sort of batting confidence. But we said, Mash, we'll keep it to it. We'll just do a short, quick review just to summarize sort of what it is. I think what we kind of agreed on is obviously there were things to take from this, positives to take from this, which we weren't expecting after the first test. However, fundamentally, India declared in both innings. They put up mammoth totals. We struggled to keep up for most of the sessions across the test. And most importantly, we've ended that up 0-5 when it comes to the World Test Championship. So
before we go, Santokie, I'm going to ask you one simple question with a quick answer. Rate the series out of 10 for West Indies.
4.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not giving the rating. Get in the comments below. Get in the comments below. Do you think Santokie has rated our series performance too high, too low, or just right? Because I'm intrigued, actually. Yeah. We might come back and do an episode on player ratings, but I want series rating only, people. Out of 10, give us a rating. Santokie said 4. But as Santokie says, we're finishing up here. We're only doing quick ones these days. As ever, though, before you go, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the podcast. Become a patron, people. Yeah. It really helps our podcast grow. Basically covers our running costs as a podcast. www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket. at the very least, if you can't do that, on the way out, like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, and follow us on all the different social handles. We'll be back very, very soon. Got tons more content, stuff we've been had in the archives waiting to drop for a while, but India series took a lot of time. And also, of course, Bangladesh series is starting on Saturday. So the cricket we can't even take a break, because Bangladesh ODI series starts, the down bad championship starts in the ODIs, and then T20 straight after that as well. So Santokie and I aren't going anywhere. We'll be back very, very soon with even more content. Lock in, people, and thank you for listening.
West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.